I'm very pleased to introduce next Debbie Lindgren. Debbie is a certified homeopath, co-founder of Blue Dominoes, an online resource for parents and teachers who are looking for environmentally friendly ways for children to interact with the environment. She began creating art supplies after her son was diagnosed with lead poisoning, and in kindergarten was discovered to be very sensitive to the modeling products that were used in the classroom. Thank you for being with us, Debbie.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. And I just want to share the story of my younger son. I have two beautiful sons, and my youngest one, around the age of 2, became really ill and started losing language, vomiting. He had a lot of severe symptoms. As everyone on this panel, I think, has had the misfortune of going through, we went from physician to physician trying to figure out what was going on with our child. Unfortunately, one of the many diagnoses we received along the way, we received potentially, severe ADHD, potentially autism, and we were just going through and trying to figure out how to best treat our child. What eventually ended up being the factor in my son's illness as well as his recovery was the discovery that he actually had lead poisoning. And that's the reason I'm here with you today, is to share this with you, because according to the latest research, the Illinois Department of Health, they estimate that 1 out of every 6 children in the US under age 7 has elevated lead levels. The EPA had numbers last year that stated 1 in 11 children are impacted by lead. So it's much more widespread than what is being discussed in the media. Why this concerned me was obviously lead can kind of act as another illness. For instance, it's often mistaken for ADHD. The Environmental Health Perspectives, they're a journal which is published by the National Institute of Health, has estimated that as many as 21% of all ADHD cases in the US are really lead poisoning cases that are misdiagnosed. These children are being given perhaps medicines that will not help their condition. So again, we need to really work on getting the word out there about lead poisoning. In addition, in 2007, Michigan State University compared the blood lead levels of children with ADHD to those without ADHD. And what they discovered that the children who had ADHD only had 1.3 micrograms per deciliter in their blood. The current standard in the US is 10 micrograms per deciliter. So this is way below what the government is saying is acceptable. And these children were shown to have ADHD symptoms. And the reason these children were exhibiting this is the researchers discovered that the synapse formation that helps to sustain self-regulation wasn't being closed at the proper time. So again, these children with proper care and nutrition were able to make some recoveries. There's a lot of overlap with ADHD and lead poisoning. For instance, weakness in attention, aggression, abnormal gait, poor eye-hand coordination. A number of these things can be linked to both. So it's really important if you suspect your child has ADHD. It's a simple blood test, sometimes even a urine test. There's even saliva tests nowadays that can help point you in the right direction. Lead has also been inexplicably linked to autism. There's been a lot of talk with vaccines and mercury with autism, but what's not being discussed in the media at all, I have not seen, is lead with autism. And again, the Journal of Applied Research followed several children who had severe lead poisoning, and during that time they were misdiagnosed as having autism. As they were properly diagnosed and given proper treatment, chelation therapy, those children lost their autism diagnosis. And this led the researchers to conclude that emergence from lead-induced autism is possible. There was also another study conducted by the Environmental Health Center in Buffalo, New York, and they treated children with autism spectrum disorders as well as ADHD, and all patients had high levels of lead in their urine. After 3 to 6 months in the study, all children showed significant improvement in many areas of social interaction, concentration, writing, and language. Again, all children had huge levels of lead, and they all dropped dramatically, and they all showed improvement. And this is not something that's new. In the 1980s, clinical pediatrics discussed a possible connection between lead poisoning and autism. In March of 1996, Missouri Medicine reported cases of children with autism and ADHD who improved while on chelation therapy. And in November of 2002, the American Family Physician noted that lead poisoning may be one of the causes of autism. There are many symptoms of lead poisoning that overlap with autism as well. seizures, tooth decay, aggression, again, weakness and attention. And I guess one thing that I really want to share with you today is that what's often being discussed in the media is lead poisoning and lead paint on walls, and that is one of the sources, but there are so many other sources. For instance, even if you have a new home, your child is going to a school which may not be new. That's what happened in our case. That's not where my son contracted lead poisoning, but it was one of the issues that I really had to look at before I sent him to that school. How were they going to clean that up? There's also, as we know, lead in soil and dust. There is lead in art supplies. My son was very sensitive to art supplies being used in his class because of the lead acetate and cadmium allowed. We ourselves as a family got lead poisoning from our dinnerware, the plates that we purchased at a local store, and it impacted our whole family. But children absorb more lead. They absorb about 50%, whereas adults absorb about 11%. And one of the things that I really want to bring to your attention is artificial food colors. Lead, mercury, and arsenic are present in artificial food colors, and I think that that's one of the reasons why people are seeing this link with ADHD behavior and artificial colors. And one thing that we had a really hard time finding was medicines without artificial colors. So if your child is prescribed an antibiotic or anything else, please keep in mind that there are wonderful compounding pharmacies that can help you with that dilemma. We have a website. It's www.bluedominoes.com. And again, I'll be available afterwards as well to help answer any questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Debbie.